Clock's just slightly slow. Okay. Oh, get that out from under my. It's gonna make the gavel. It's gonna make the gavel sound funny.
The borough has green buttons.
Are you sick, really? Promise?
Yeah. Promise? Okay.
That's not funny.
Okay, call the March 11th, 2024 meeting of the Harris Township Supervisors to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so first on the agenda, of course, is approval of minutes from February 12th, 2024. That's the only minutes we have today.
So moved, sir.
Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next we have a time for citizen comments. So if anybody in the public would like to say anything that's not on the agenda, please come to the microphone and introduce yourself.
Hello. My name is Elliot Steek. I'm from Harris Avenue. I live in Harris Township. I'm here on behalf of an advocacy class to thank you both as a resident of Harris Township and a student for your continued support at First Floor Library, as well as your support of this community by being on the Board of Supervisors. Thank you for your time here. Thank you for allowing me to speak here. Thank you.
Tell us about yourself.
I'm 16. I'm a sophomore in high school, and I'm here for an advocacy class.
Okay. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Is there anybody else in the public who would like to make a comment? Seeing none, moving right along. The new agenda items, does anybody have any new agenda items they'd like to add to the agenda? Okay, none. Very good, thank you. So we'll move on to township business. So first thing is the presentation of the 2023 audit. So we have somebody from Mara Dussel here. We'll come to the microphone.
Supervisor with Mara Dussel, and I'm just going to go over some of the audit highlights with you guys. So on the first slide here, we have just a listing of the reports that are issued. We obviously have the DCAD, the legal advertisement, which is essentially just a summary of the DCAD, as well as the communication to those charged with governance, which is just our required communications to the Board of Supervisors. So moving on, what is our responsibility under auditing standards? We're just making sure that the schedules are presented fairly according to the DCAD standards and providing reasonable assurance that these standards are free of material misstatement. These reports that I'm presenting, they are final, so they did hit your end of March deadline as well. And with these last three bullet points, significant accounting policies, accounting estimates, and disclosures. Since you guys are a cash basis DCAD, these are not required, and so there's really nothing significant with those. They're just required to be stated. Moving on to the next slide, some more communications. There were no difficulties encountered while performing the audit, so a big thank you to Mark and Dwight and the rest of the Harris Township staff for a smooth audit process again this year. There were no corrected or uncorrected misstatements, no disagreements with management. And then management representations, consultations with other independent accountants, and any issues prior to signing our engagement letter, there were no issues with any of these as well. So the summary of the results, this is essentially just your audit opinion. It is an unmodified opinion on the regulatory basis, and this is the highest opinion that we can provide. So finally, we're going to get into some of the financial items. Here you'll see a breakout of your fund balances for each of the funds. You'll see the tree fund, there was no activity this year, so that one is at 0. And then the 3 largest fund balances are your fire protection, which is at approximately $524,000. The capital projects fund, which is at about $461,000, and your general fund, which is right at $98,000. The next slide then will just show you the changes in your fund balance from the beginning to the end of the year. So you can see at the beginning of the year it was at approximately $1.55 million, and at the end of the year it's at about $1.13 million. The special revenue and your capital projects both increased about $150,000 and $120,000 each, and then the general fund decreased by that approximately $684,000, and this is just due to an increase in your maintenance and road repairs, specifically Mary Elizabeth Street, that was at about $460,000 of expenses, and your South Church Street project at about $120,000 in expenses. So that shows the majority of what the decrease is in the current year. Were there any questions?
In your first circular graph,
Yes.
where does the police service fall?
Where does what go?
Well, the contract with police.
Oh, the contract with the police, I believe that would be under your general fund, I believe.
It's general.
Okay, okay. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Thank you
That
very much.
it? Well, thank you, Lindsay. Moving right along. Okay. All right.
Do we have to vote on that? Do we have to accept it?
No, you don't need to take any action, it's just,
Okay.
Presentation, okay. All right, Mount Nittany Winery Component 2 Planning Module. I'm guessing Todd?
actually, I'll go ahead and read that in.
Okay.
Henry Surveys submitted a Component 2 planning module to establish a primary and replacement absorption area at the Mount Nittany Winery on Hauser Road. This planning module is not related to a land development plan and was submitted to address a septic issue. The module proposes 2 absorption areas as required, both of which meet the required isolation distance from the existing well on the property. Component 4A was completed by Township staff, and Component 4B was completed by the CRPA, neither of which identified any planning concerns. The SEO also signed the modules. So the recommendation is that the board move to approve Resolution 2404, the planning module for the Mount Nittany Winery, and refer to the Department of Environmental Protection for approval. And I will note that Fred and Kathy Henry are present if you have any questions about the module itself. And the plan is also on the wall.
Is there just one well on that property to serve the residents and the winery building? Just one?
Just one.
Okay.
Holy shit.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion that we approve Resolution 2404. Second.
Okay, motion made by Frank, seconded by Bruce. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Next, we have the... Thank you.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Next, we have the Edward W. Bickle Minor Subdivision Plan Component 1 Planning Module.
Albright Land Surveying submitted a Component 1 planning module for the Edward W. Bickle Minor Subdivision Plan on Smith Lane. The plan proposes subdividing a 111.7 acre parcel into 2 lots, one of which will be 10 acres and the other 101.7 acres. Neither parcel contains any existing development. Primary and replacement area testing was conducted for the proposed 10-acre parcel. A sewage planning waiver has been requested for the residual 101.7 acre lot. The applicant has submitted the appropriate DEP form for the requested waiver and provided appropriate notes on the plan. The requested waiver is consistent with Chapter
9-4.5K, which provides requirements for sewage planning waivers in the township. So normally we wouldn't have you take action on a planning module before the plan, but in this particular case, if the board was not comfortable with the waiver, it could require changes to the plan in order for the plan to be approved. And they would have to go back and do sewage testing for that residual lot. But if the board is comfortable with the waiver, with approving the requested waiver, it's our recommendation that the board move to approve the requested sewage planning waiver and Resolution 2405, the planning module for the Edward W. Bickle minor subdivision, and refer it to the Department of Environmental Protection for approval.
Historically, we've talked about this waiver idea.
Yes.
It's being requested because that 101 acre piece is not going to have a structure on it. It's going to remain agriculture.
That is
'Cause
what,
Ed lives on another piece next to it.
yes, that's what the plan states. There is a note on the plan.
Yeah, okay.
That 100-acre parcel will be used for agriculture
Yeah.
at this time, and if they ever want to develop it, they'll have to do sewage planning at that time.
Yeah, that's what I remembered. Okay.
And we did add that, that chapter 9-4.5K was added by the board probably 2 years ago to provide criteria for waiver requests like this.
For the same property owner.
Same property.
Yeah.
Well, it was
But-
actually after, I believe, they
But-
had a waiver and then we made the ordinance.
Right, exactly, but
Is this the
perfectly
same-
reasonable.
didn't we go over- Is this another section, or is this the same one we looked at several years ago?
It's the same property that you looked at several years ago, it's just half of that property. If you remember, that property was 230-ish acres in size, it was split in half, and the waiver was granted to do any testing for this lot in question, and now it is being further split down into a 10-acre lot and then the residual 100 acres.
Can I ask a question? I don't know if it pertains to this one or the next one we talk about the subdivision. We just passed this ordinance, the ag ordinance.
Yeah.
How does this hook into this? Because I saw there's something about the conservation design was waived, but with that, one of the purposes of that was so we maintained open space. What keeps somebody from keep getting waivers and just, take 10 acres off here, 10 acres off here, and it kind of defeats the purpose of our ag zone that we did to preserve open space. So I guess that's my question is, how is this impacting that?
Well, that is kind of more into the discussion about the subdivision, so if
Okay.
you want, we can talk about that in the next item.
That's fine, and I just was
Yeah.
having, when I read it, I kept getting that question, but
I wouldn't say that the sewage waiver is not the same as the waiver of the conservation design. So
Okay.
this is just strictly a sewage planning waiver.
And when Mr. Bickle did the request to build Lot 2A, the farm was in its total size of 230. And since that time, the farm has been split.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're dealing with a new,
I understand, I
new
understood.
farm complex.
Right, I
Yeah.
understood that.
I move to approve the requested sewage planning waiver and resolution 24-05.
A second?
Okay.
Frank.
Motion by Bruce, seconded by Frank. This is just for the waiver. You don't want to add the planning module to that, or separate
we'll do
I
motion?
think you also made a motion for resolution 2405, did you not?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
that
for
is the
both.
entire planning
Yes.
module, too, just to clarify that. Okay. Motion and a second. Do we have any more discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. That sounds unanimous. All right, we'll move right on to the Edward W. Bickle minor subdivision plan.
On January 24th of this year, staff received from Albright Land Surveying LLC a minor subdivision plan that would create a 10-acre lot from the 111.7-acre Edward Bickle Farm west of Smith Lane. The parent tract is a farm field and contains no residences. The 10-acre lot proposes direct access to Smith Lane and would utilize both on-site water and sewer services. Fire protection for habitable structures is proposed via a requirement noted on the plan for fire suppression sprinkler systems. The proposed lot qualifies as exempt from the conservation design regulations recently adopted by Harris Township, and all the information required to be included on a plan applicable to exempt lots has been provided. Staff has completed 2 reviews of the plan, the second of which is included with the agenda, as well as a plan sheet showing the proposed subdivision. Remaining comments are few and should be able to be addressed in a timely fashion.
Waiver request for the plan scale to be allowed at 1 inch equals 200 feet rather than the required 1 inch equals 50 feet or larger has been submitted due to the large size of the property being subdivided. Staff's recommendation is 1, move to approve the waiver request of 11-3.1 of the Harris Township Ordinance Plan Scale to allow a scale of 1 inch equals 200 feet. And 2, move to approve the Edward W. Bickle minor subdivision plan contingent upon satisfactory completion of the comments from the February 22nd, 2024 letter of the zoning officer and the February 28th, 2024 memo of the CRPA director. And the plan on the right here is the plan you'd be looking at here.
I'll make the motion for discussion.
Okay. Dennis made the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it, but
Okay.
I would like to
Second
be
by Frank.
clarified here.
Okay.
Yeah, the question you asked, Frank, it was always part of the open space rural clustering regulations that you could have so many lots that were exempt from the open space rural clustering, and I think it was limited at 2. When we talked about this, in situations where people were going to provide tracts that were large enough to farm, we presented with still a limited number of exempt lots that they could do. In a case like this, where it's a larger lot, it's based on a multiplier. So there's a note on the plan. It's obviously too small for me to see from here. You guys have the copies of the plan in front of you. There's a note on the right. I think it's down here. Does that note there indicate how many exempt lots can?
Exempt lot area planting 24.93, 4.155 acres.
Yeah, and it says somewhere in there how many total exempt lots can be subdivided.
It says 7 allowed, 1 lot proposed, 6
7?
left.
Right,
Allowed, 1 proposed.
right. So there is a limit on the number of exempt lots that can be subdivided off of any rurally zoned property in Harris Township. Whenever we talked about it, we thought it was best to not necessarily cap it at 2 in case someone owned a lot of property or they had a number of children that they wanted to cut off lots for to have them build their own houses on the property.
But acreage as well.
Yeah, it's based on acreage too.
I mean, they can't have more acreage, a certain amount of acreage in this exempt lots.
Right.
And that 7 would not have to all be the same size lot,
No,
would it?
no.
It go from, it can't go less than 10, is that Gary?
No, I believe you can go less
One?
than 10, yeah.
Yeah.
1 all the way up.
Right, the difference is, and it's probably on there on the note, there is a limit on how much acreage can be included in exempt lots, and that's the key. So if they use 10 acres to create 1 lot, the remaining 6 are gonna have to be a lot smaller if they wanna maximize their exemptions. It really comes down to how they wanna utilize their exempt area, if you will.
24.93.
Right, so that's the most of the property that could ever be taken up in an exempt lot,
Now, that 10-acre lot now,
yes.
is it allowed to be subdivided further?
No.
No, I didn't think, okay.
Yeah.
If they did another subdivision, they would be required to do an HOP on just Smith Lane?
They're not required to do a highway or a road occupancy permit now. They
But
would at the
in the
time.
future.
Yeah, at the time that they go to build on the property, they would have to get a road occupancy permit for access because Smith is a township street.
Yeah.
Okay, any more discussion? All satisfied? Well, we'll call the question then. All in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That sounds unanimous. Thank you. All right, Spring Creek Watershed Commission update. Bob Igo, you're up.
Good evening. It's good to see you. Last time I was here to talk with you about the commission was last September. This is a fairly quick update, hopefully. The organization, the commission was reorganized as usual in January. Our new chair is Randy Brackville. He's on the Bellefonte Borough Council. Dustin Best, who's College Township Supervisor. Our treasurer is Kevin Abbey out of Ferguson. Our secretary is Lee Murphy, who's out of college, and we have one at-large representative on the executive committee, and that's Jasmine Fields from the State College Borough. For the year 2023, just a real quick reminder that in 2022, the commission approved the phase 2 of the watershed plan, and so we began implementation in the end of 2022 and into 2023. Over the past year, we've upgraded the structure of the commission to our bylaws and made them a little bit more robust, so that we have a little bit more certainty of what our leadership's going to look like from year to year, or could look like from year to year. We put our first budget together, so we have a budget of about $23,000, so it's not huge, but it's something that we're looking at and doing. Kevin Abbey's done a really good job of bringing us up to speed on our finances and getting billings out and making that a more business-like function within the commission. We also started a mapping project last year. It's a GIS product. I know Mark was in discussions in 2022 when we were looking at our official map. And that was kind of the impetus behind where we've gone with this mapping idea of putting, it's a GIS map with many layers to it that will have, you'll see land developments throughout the watershed area. You'll see boundaries, municipal boundaries, see all sorts of infrastructure, as well as the waterways. The map is hosted by HRG, which is the county's engineering consultant. They're developing it for us, and they will manage it for us. There are no restrictions on it for us, so they've been very generous with that. The idea is that our technical users, engineers, people out of the authorities, will be able to go in and put data into it. So if we have a project, if our engineers have projects, they can go in, update it on there, and everybody will have access to this. We'll host it on the Watershed Commission's website. We'll have public access to view it. Only the technical users will have the ability to go in and update it. So the idea is that we have a platform out there for everybody to go and see what's going on. It's a very dynamic tool. So we started that. The other thing that's gone on, when we talked last time, we talked about the committees that we'd spun up over the year in 2022. They continued to meet last year, 3 and 4 times, depending on the committee and what they have going on. But just a real quick recap, we have the authorities committees, which is composed of membership from all the authorities across the watershed. So you have UAJA, you have College Township, State College Borough, you have Benner Township, Springwater, CRPA, you have county planning. So that group, and they're focused on really looking right now. It's a communication type effort and talking about what the different groups have going on. There's some hope that they will bring on the mapping tool, and at some point that becomes a planning tool. The governance committee, which is composed of township engineers, they've embraced the mapping tool. They're learning how to use it and looking at it and populate it. They've focused a lot on stormwater management, a lot of stormwater management discussions going on, a lot of discussion about MS4 and how they can best coordinate. So projects, Penn State has some big projects going on with the duck pond. I don't think we have too much going on here, but when Ferguson has a lot going on, there's discussion on how to best use MS4 credits and dollars. So that's a pretty robust group. And then conservation and stewardship group, that group's just kind of getting started. They kind of took a step back when Clearwater got redeveloped last year and went through organizational change. So, and then the fourth third major item, I guess we'd say, would be the development of an action plan for 2024. For the upcoming year, we're looking to enhance our educational efforts and our presentations to the board and the commission on outreach, continued development of the working committees. But each of the committees have agreed to meet 4 times this year, so they'll meet quarterly. We're not twisting anybody's arm to make these things happen. This is something that they see value in and agreed to continue to participate. We've hired an AmeriCorps support person who's helping us do a lot of things that was volunteer stuff before. So right now she's working on a state of the watershed meeting that's coming up on the March 28th. During that meeting we'll explain a little bit more what's going on with the mapping. We'll demo the map. There'll be discussion about water quality and methodologies that are being used to study the stream. We're supporting obviously the Spring Creek Cleanup Day, which is April 20th. We're in the process of looking at developing a fall cleanup project to go with that. We're updating our website so that we can do things like put this map out there. There'll be a number of other maps that come from professional agencies like DEP. They've got some interesting stuff that we can put out there for public consumption. We're looking at developing new funding sources and development of the 2025 plan. So that's where we're up to. Questions?
Thank you, Bob.
Yep.
So, I just had a question. Are you guys going to be at the Cato Spring Convention here at the end of the month? 27th.
27. I don't think we've planned on it, Frank. I know you've mentioned that before, and I appreciate that. Again, we talked about.
Get in touch with Jen Snyder at College Township.
Where is it at?
It will be at CPI.
Is that CATO?
CCATO. From the County Association.
Okay, we'll talk. Any other questions? Thoughts? All right.
Okay,
Thank you, Bob.
thank you. Okay, moving right along. Sign ordinance rewrite, final draft.
At the February meeting, the final draft of the rewrite of the sign regulations was reviewed. The board asked staff to pose one question to the township solicitor for further clarification, and we have done so and have received a response, which is included with the agenda. In brief, the board wanted to know if the ordinance could be amended to carve out an exemption for election or campaign signs placed within street rights-of-way while prohibiting all other signs from said rights-of-way. Township solicitor's response was no, that the exception described is the very basis for the Gilbert Supreme Court decision that triggered mass ordinance changes, including our current effort. Since the exception would be predicated upon the message displayed on the sign, and since the township would have to evaluate the sign content to determine if the regulations have been met, such an ordinance would not pass the legal test established by the Gilbert decision. The township solicitor offered that allowing signs within street rights-of-way really is an all-or-nothing proposition. One other issue that the board discussed is the term of a permanent sign license. The current ordinance, as well as the proposed draft, requires a 3-year term. 2 of the 3 other Center Region townships that issue sign licenses have 3-year terms for permanent signs. The other township has a 1-year term for permanent signs, with the yearly renewal fee slightly less than the original license fee, $5 less in most cases. Staff's recommendation is this is a discussion item again this month. If the board would like additional information on these or other issues, staff can collect the information for the April meeting. If the board chooses to endorse the draft as written or with minor changes, staff can implement any minor amendments, and the board can direct staff to send the draft for review to the Center Region Planning Commission and advertise the amendment for potential adoption at a future meeting. The blue memo letter that was in your agenda packets was the actual response from the township solicitor. So we'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
pretty clear.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, if we allow political signs, then they also gotta allow the one that says Frank Harden sucks, right?
I haven't seen any of those,
But
but
I'm just saying, that
You're
you
still on
can
the
put
board.
that one out there, right?
So, if I may. All or nothing, is nothing an option?
yes. You can prohibit all signs within the right of way, or you can allow all signs within the right of way.
And then with a permit sign license, how does that fit into the mix? If we allow people to get a sign license, that would be, the only way you'd be allowed to have a sign is by obtaining a license.
Well, the sign license issue is separate from whether or not we allow them within the right of way. Tracy brought up the question at the last meeting when we moved on to the section about the license term for permanent signs. She wondered if 3 years was the best figure, and we researched the Center Region municipalities to see what they did, just as a comparison. We wouldn't necessarily license any signs within the right of way. You can regulate them by size and location. So if you say you can't have a sign bigger than 2 square feet or 5 square feet in the right of way, that could fall under the, we could add something to the section, signs allowed in all zoning districts, that addresses your wish to allow all signs within the right of way, as you would have to do.
How do the other townships that you talk to deal with the political sign issue?
Well, I didn't actually
Because
talk
they're
to,
proliferated.
yeah.
How do you control that proliferation?
I didn't actually talk to any of the other municipalities. I reviewed their ordinances
Okay.
to see what their ordinances said. I think, for the most part, those municipalities prohibit signs within street rights of way too. I think one municipality allows campaign signs to be within the right of way so long as the board or council approves them in advance. Again, I don't know how strict the other region municipalities follow the Gilbert ruling. We're trying to make ours be 100% compliant with Gilbert.
So what Bruce said, we're either all in or all out,
Yeah.
correct?
And that's what our solicitor says.
So the other townships that allow them aren't enforcing anything? They aren't enforcing the sign placement issue?
I don't know that I want to interpret what other municipalities are doing versus what they have on their books.
Okay.
But still, temporary signs on private property is okay.
Yes.
So, kind of get
Just
that
when you
out
come
there.
to that public property line.
Yeah.
Yeah, what we talked about last month is these would fall under the personal expression signs that you can put on private property without a license, so long as they're of a certain size, and up to 3 per property.
But we want to allow signs to go up nilly-nilly, because that's what's gonna happen if we allow them to go into if you allow political ones, then people can put whatever they want up.
Yeah.
Now, we do have a limit on how long they can be up, correct? That's in the ordinance, right?
Our current ordinance says that the campaign signs can be placed 30 days prior to the election, have to be removed within 7 days after.
What about non-political signs? Do they have any kind of expiration?
No.
So somebody could put one out in the right of way and it could be there forever.
Well, under the current ordinance, no signs are allowed in any right of way.
Oh,
And until we found out about the Gilbert decision, we enforced that pretty strictly. We were always removing signs that were within the right of way with the exception of campaign signs.
well, then it sounds to me like if we want to approve signs in the right of ways, we better put some kind of time limit on it also, like we do on the political signs.
Well, then that would have to apply to all signs.
Yes,
Is
we
that
have to apply
correct?
to all signs.
Well, all temporary signs do have a limit on how long they can be there. I think it's 90 days. I could see that being a very tedious thing to do. And we would pretty much have to issue permits or licenses for all those signs if we're going to regulate them as to time.
Coming up here in another, what, 2 or 3 weeks, we'll be within 30 days of the primaries.
Fortunately, local political signs disappear pretty quickly within a couple of days. It's the one for the statewide candidates that typically end up being mowed over with the tractors and never get moved.
Or removed by somebody, yeah.
Yeah. You know, because once the judge candidate sticks it in, who's to care?
Yeah, if you decide that you want no signs within street rights of way, that's fine with me. I'll remove them all.
That's always been my feeling. I've always thought that campaign signs were just left there because nobody's just gonna bother with that. But, yeah, I don't think signs belong in the right of way at all. And political signs can get pretty out of hand in right of ways. And
What's the pushback from the court if we do that? That issue solved?
The pushback from the court?
From a local candidate that can't put a sign in the right of way, do they have the freedom to take it to court, or is this case solved that already?
Well, anybody has freedom to go to court anytime they want. I think what your solicitor is advising is that the Supreme Court has ruled that if an ordinance prohibits all signs within street rights of way, that they can't be there, period, and if we remove them, we are covered, according to the
We are,
Supreme Court.
okay. That was the basis of the question. Okay.
Yes.
So does our draft regulation now prohibit all signs in the right of way?
Yes.
Keep it.
Yeah, I think it's time we send it on to the Center Region Planning. So we have little busy parties going out picking up signs every other day or coming up in about a month?
No, because this won't be adopted for a couple months yet anyhow, so it won't apply really for, as far as political signs are concerned, until the fall election. But you will likely hear some complaints.
You do more removal of the furniture mattress kind of issue that, in the old shed, we used to have a lot of those
Yeah.
popping up at all the intersections, so.
I think it got too costly for some businesses to keep replacing them, so they stopped doing it.
You didn't get them back.
say bringing that up, say a temporary sign for a business like, mattresses, gets put on private property, like the Bull Mansion property off the right of way. That's permitted?
Now, that's not a personal expression sign, that's an
Okay,
actual
that's a
commercial
business
sign,
I
so
see,
that's
okay.
different.
So what's the difference between the personal expression and the?
The definition of personal expression sign in the ordinance specifically calls out that it can't have any commercial advertising.
But if you have commercial advertising, what does that do? Does this belong in the same thing? You cannot put a sign out for commercial advertising either?
I don't think that you would be allowed to be putting out a commercial advertisement sign in a zoning district that doesn't allow commercial uses.
So you're allowed to put a commercial advertising sign in a right-of-way
No,
as
you're
long
not.
as it's an area that has commercial uses?
No,
So
you
you're not allowed to
can't.
put any signs in the
No
right-of-way?
signs.
Not in the
Okay,
right of way.
perfect.
Right.
Keeping it as it is, then, and adhering to the, really doesn't change things.
It doesn't change the draft, no.
Yeah. What's in the recommendation, I think, is
Mhm.
basically what we're doing,
Right,
and we can continue to do that.
yes.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
I'll make a motion that.
Well, wait a minute, the other issue is the sign license term, permanent sign license term.
Oh, okay. What was it on the draft?
What the draft says 3 years, our current ordinance says 3 years. For reference, all the Center Region municipalities that issue sign license say 3 years except one, and it says 1 year. They have to renew it every year.
Oh,
Isn't that ridiculous?
I think 3's fine. Yeah, I don't think we need to change that.
I like a nice 5 because then I can tell.
Okay.
It's just me.
I think the 3 is probably adequate.
You win some, you lose some.
No, it
Sometimes you get
doesn't-
rained
it
out.
just-
Oh,
Yeah,
This
the
is
planning
like
commission
10,
specifically talked
15,
about that,
20.
and they were happy with 3.
Three come back if you want to find, but no.
Yeah. It makes sense to keep it in line with other Center Region municipalities too.
So I can make my motion?
You may.
Okay, I make a motion that we forward the draft of our sign ordinance to the Center Region Planning Commission for review, I guess is what I want to say.
And advertise.
And then.
And advertising, okay.
Both.
Yeah. For adoption at a future meeting, that's what I'm saying.
Second.
Okay, good. Do you want me to get
Okay.
that all that?
Motion by Frank, seconded by Bruce. Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. So the draft for non-conforming parking regulations.
On April 17th, 2023, the Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission held a joint meeting to discuss the recommendations of the Village Parking Committee. The committee had provided a number of recommendations to the board in a 2022 final report, including the need to review the mix of residential and non-residential uses within the village. During this discussion, the board asked the Planning Commission to look for a short-term solution to address properties in the village that have no ability to provide any off-street parking. Over the past several months, the Planning Commission worked on drafting regulations that would allow for the registration of non-conforming amounts of parking. The proposed regulations were drafted to address properties in the village with legally established uses that lack adequate parking to meet current parking requirements, but could apply to other properties in the township if the requirements are met. The benefits of the proposed regulations is that once a non-conforming amount of parking is registered, the use of the property could be changed by a current or subsequent owner so long as the amount of required parking does not increase. So for example, an existing legally established 2,000 square foot retail use would be required to have 8 parking spaces per our current ordinances. If the property has no ability to provide off-street parking, a nonconformity of 8 spaces could be registered. The use or uses of the property could be changed in the future so long as the amount of parking required does not exceed that 8 spaces. If the amount of required parking does exceed 8 spaces, the owner would need to provide the difference between the requirement and the registered nonconformity. The ordinance provides provisions to address potential expansion of a use or uses on a property. The ordinance also specifies that a non-conforming amount of parking can not be registered until the ability to provide on-site parking has been exhausted. If a property owner could potentially provide parking on-site, they could not register the remaining non-conformity until that parking was provided. The Planning Commission's 2024 work plan includes the comprehensive analysis of zoning in Boalsburg, which they began discussing at their February meeting. This process should help identify some of the potential long-term solutions that were discussed at the April 2023 meeting. So the recommendation tonight is that this is a discussion item. If the board is satisfied with the draft regulations as presented, staff should be directed to forward the proposed ordinance to the CRPC for review and advertise the amendment for potential adoption at a future meeting.
That's a complex one.
I thought it was fairly simple.
Me too.
I thought it made, I just thought it made sense out of what we've been trying to do for the last year, as far as non-conforming properties.
How long is it gonna take until, I don't like what this says.
Mhm.
Okay? I have concerns. If this is something that's going into the long term, or if this is just a temporary, and we may turn all this around at the end and say, this is not what we want, we're gonna do this. Shall I tell them what my problem is?
That's entirely up
Okay,
to you.
So I have a property that's got 2,000 square feet, and I have another property that has 2,000 square feet. One of these properties has the maximum amount of, one's a restaurant, which is the maximum amount of parking spaces needed.
They would need 20 for that.
Okay, so now that's registered now as non-conforming, and it needs 20 spaces. This with 2,000 square feet over here is an office, okay? Which is what, 2 spaces, is that, something like that?
An office would need to have, probably 7 spaces in that case.
But that's the least number, what are the least numbers?
It's one of the lower, yes.
Okay, so now this one can only register non-conforming as an office because it is an office. This one can register non-conforming as a restaurant because it is a restaurant, okay? So my problem is how can you reconcile that this one can't do much of anything because it's an office. So it can't be a retail space, it can't be any of those uses, it has to stay an office. Where this one over here can do anything they want. I can't reconcile that. Saying one property can do anything they want, and this one, they can't do anything, or very little. Because we're telling them, you're registered as non-conforming, bam. So I have a hard time with that. It doesn't make sense to me that you're dictating that one can do significantly more than another.
What I can say, at least to what I think what Tracy's describing, is that the degree of nonconformity will differ by property based on what the use is and how many spaces they have on the property, if any. So it is going to differ, and that's also going to change their right to make changes to the property in the future. I don't know of an easy way around that through a non-conforming regulation, because the fact is we have a lot of properties in the village right now, as well as possibly others in the township, and primarily in our commercial districts, I'll say, is where it would be. I don't think this would have a lot of applicability in a residential area. But we have a lot of properties that probably have insufficient parking, so there's already a lot of these non-conforming situations existing. We just don't have a mechanism in the ordinance right now to recognize it, and the Planning Commission felt like this was a good approach to allowing these properties that don't have enough parking to be able to change their use and not lose out on the ability to go back to what they had been before, if that makes sense.
I think we can do better. I really think that denying one property and giving one property everything is not where I want to be.
Yeah, I don't think we're doing that. Because if I read this correctly, what we're trying to do is provide an opportunity for businesses to acquire, I guess is the best way to put it, non-conforming spaces. So if I read number 2 on C on this green sheet, it says, if a new use or uses have a parking requirement that is greater than the requirement established in the non-conforming amount of parking restrictions, or registrations, the number of off-street parking spaces required by this article shall be provided for the entire use or uses minus any pre-existing lawful deficit in the number of parking spaces. So I think we're covering that. I mean, if you're allowed to take, and from what I'm understanding, let's say that space, it has 7 now, okay, that are conforming or non-conforming, and a business goes in there that needs 10, then they would have to come back with another thing that says, okay, I have 7 on site, I need 3 more. Correct? Is that what I'm reading?
Yeah, essentially anytime you want to change the use to something that requires more parking, you would have to provide that balance, just whatever the balance might be.
Where would you provide that balance?
Well, that could be with an adjacent property owner, under our current ordinance. It could be with an adjacent property owner if they have the ability to provide you parking spaces, or a property within 66 feet if they have the ability to provide you with that parking.
But that's very small. That's too small. We can do better. We can do much better. If we say 1,000 feet, 1,500 feet, we change that number, then we're at least giving options open to the person who is not receiving that. I'd be significantly more comfortable if we provided a longer distance.
Well, wasn't that sent back to those guys? What did they come back with?
I'll have to go back and look and see if it was ever sent back to the Planning Commission. I know the board did talk about it. There was concerns about, I remember there was concerns about whether or not parking would be allowed on the other side of Bowl Avenue. I remember that being an issue because of the distance that was proposed, as well as the fact that the vast majority of parking spaces in the village are going to be located off of alleys, and we don't have any pedestrian access. So it was a concern of where could a lot of these parking spaces be shared if there's no way to safely get people from the space to the place they're going to. There might be other locations of the village that could share with, the churches. That's possible, but certain parts of the village, particularly I think this eastern portion of Main Street as well as the western portion, they were further away from some of those properties in terms of walking distance.
Could the parking lot be included in that? I follow Tracy's thinking of
I agree with
66
that.
feet to me
We are creating a
is sort of
municipal
narrow.
parking lot to alleviate some of this problem. So why is the municipal parking lot not being considered as a possibility, just being considered as something to help alleviate some of
It's
these
not going to be
issues?
66 feet though.
No, I would point out that this municipal parking lot my opinion, of course, is that it should be open to everybody in the municipality to use and not have it where they're dedicated spaces to certain businesses.
But we are
Because
not dedicating the space.
I understand that. My point would be, if you're going to count this parking towards properties, I don't know how you go about doing that judiciously other than on a first come, first served basis, which will of course leave people
Let
out.
everybody claim those spaces.
But if anything, as part of the zoning study that's happening, if there's any proposal to look at the amount of parking that's available on street as well as, I guess it'd be off street, but publicly available, would that have any merit then in looking how to use that in terms of a modifier for parking requirements in the village itself? But that's something the planning commission is gonna have to think about separately. It's just something that hasn't been studied yet.
Distance-wise, you mentioned the church parking lot.
Yes.
The distance from downtown to the churches would be about equal from this diamond to our ladder, wouldn't it? A block,
Yeah, I can't remember the exact distances,
block
but
and a half?
we had a map that had a bunch of lines on it showing kind of from different points in the village how far it was to go, 600 feet, 1,000 feet, 1,500 feet. And I think it was maybe a little further down to the churches from,
Do the
diamond.
churches have the opportunity to say no?
well, certainly, I mean, it's private property. Any private property owner does not have to agree to share their spaces, so certainly.
Because that was brought up when the brewery was looking for parking.
Sure,
There was a no on that one, so.
okay.
Now, I have a question about that. So potential liability for having people walk on alleys, is that really a concern? I mean,
I think the concern would be if the township is allowing someone to establish parking off-site as required parking, and we don't have a safe mechanism to get people from that parking to the place that they're supposed to be going to. I don't know what our liability would be, but it would be something we'd certainly want to investigate with the solicitor because of the fact that
right, I mean, that's where I'm going, because alleys are pretty safe for pedestrians generally, because cars can't tear down alleys really fast.
generally, but they're not well lit, and there's
true.
no, so it's just a matter of, I don't know what the liability would be to the township.
Why is the liability such a concern when I'm running a graduation weekend or a football weekend and they'll park anywhere? So all of a sudden, we have liability concerns about this, but we don't have liability concerns with generally people coming in. What is the difference between the two?
Well, I think the difference would be that the parking that you're talking about is on the street, correct?
Nope, it could be in the alleys, it could be
Oh,
anywhere.
but it's not on your property. And
Well,
it's
I have
not
parking.
parking that we'd ever established as being parking for your business. And I think that's the difference here is if a business comes to us and says, I want to put parking, 1,000 feet away on this alleyway and there's no sidewalk network to get them from there to their business, as the township, we've just recognized that as their legal parking. So we've more or less said that's where people are going to park to get to your business. I don't know if that's a liability or not. I see it a little different though between it being required versus people just choosing to park somewhere and being able to get.
Well, I mean, people park at the lowest common denominator. I mean, they park right in front if they can park in front. So
Yes.
the space, the imaginary space that you're providing, because it is an imaginary space. I understand, I get it, I get some problems with that, but nobody is going to be parking probably in this imaginary space. You can't dictate and say, well, I'm down here, now you have to go park in this space down here that I have allocated to my place. So I guess I have some questions. I don't know how I feel about the alleys.
I would agree. One thing I'd point out though, maybe no customers would do that, but employees could certainly be directed to park there. For example, if the business says, I don't want you as my employee parking in front or nearby because I need to be able to let customers here, you might very well tell them to go park. And that's what required parking is. It's not just for customers, it is for employees as well. So that's part of the calculation is to include employees.
And we had that issue frequently. Two businesses down there, the employees took up the parking on the street.
So you're saying that for employees to park in the alley, that's okay?
No, I'm suggesting even if the employees park there, we've recognized that as legal parking for that business. I don't know if an employee were to be hit by a vehicle in an alleyway that's poorly lit with no sidewalk, and we said that's the legal parking space. I don't know what kind of liability there might be to the township for basically recognizing that as their legal parking and not providing or ensuring there's a safe way to get from point A to point B. Maybe there is no liability. It's something we'd want to ask the solicitor, but that was one of the things that came up the last time this was discussed by the board was how do you get people from these parking spaces to the businesses, be it employees or customers or whomever.
Oh, give me
I just, It seems to me the crux of this is, since we're grandfathering in existing properties on their current uses. And as Frank pointed out, we have this non-conforming clause that essentially recognizes that, but says if the use changes, you have to provide the additional increment. But you are not taking away the previous allowance that was grandfathered in.
Correct.
I'm pretty, and look, if you buy a piece of property and it has X amount of parking that works for that present use, that's capitalized into the value of that property you just bought. And so the ability to change the use of that property and make increased money is, I'm not sure that's our job. Our job is to take care of what we have here and allow for, as this clause provides, a reasonable opportunity to expand, recognizing the current situation that we're already essentially blocking ourselves
After the
into.
fact of the sale, we are not responsible.
Yeah. So that's kind of my thoughts.
Yeah.
I have one question.
Okay, go ahead.
One question, if I may. So what you're saying is that after the effect of the sale, that it really is beyond us, that somebody should turn around and do their due diligence in when they purchase a property, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's fine and dandy, except that there are people who own these properties right now where they were able to do a certain number of things for a very long time, and they had a list of things they could do. And all of a sudden, when they go to sell their properties, they have buyers coming in and buyers coming in who can't do it, and they're finding that their property is going for less money because they can't sell it, because they don't have the required parking for this and this and this and this, which is an allowable use in our township. So I'm having troubles reconciling all of this, and now that we're, properties are being sold, and we have this, and all of a sudden we're telling some properties, you're only allowed to have this, and they've had this for decades, and people bought it based on this, and now they're trying to sell it based on this, and now they're having troubles. So, and again, I just want equality in what we have, and I don't see this as being equal. I think we can do better.
My turn now?
Yeah, your turn. now.
Okay, a couple things. I want to make sure I'm understanding. Okay, what we're talking about tonight is this green sheet that you did, because we still have to iron out the distance so that there can be a way to provide this parking. We still have to figure out what this is going to count. So there's still some things like that we have to do. So all we're really looking at tonight is this formula and this system. Do we think this will work? Am I correct there? Okay.
right.
Now, as far as I would like to follow, here's the thing, okay, that I'm looking at when I look at this, and you can always sit there and say, well, I could sell it to this guy, but he needs 100 parking spaces or 5 I think that two things. Number one, the village is the village. We're not looking to put, Lowe's or Home Depot or anything like that. It's small shops, small businesses, small restaurants. That's kind of what we're looking at. And we have some that have been here a while that are bigger that we've grandfathered, which is what we're talking about here. So I think that the minute you take a property in the village and you decide for whatever reason you're going to make it into a business, it could be your home, it could be a home you bought, and there's enough parking on that property for four spaces. When you make that decision, you made the decision on what can go in there in the future. If you have 4 there now, whatever goes in there in the future, 4 is what's going to be. If you put a bunch of stuff on there and reduce it to you only have 1, and you have 1, then you've restricted it to 1. We can't, as supervisors, negate business decisions. If you make a business decision, we can't make ordinances to cover for that and make up for it so you can keep your equity. You make that decision, your equity goes with your decision. And that's kind of where I feel on this. And I'm ready to send this part up. I'm happy with this.
I don't really understand what you said.
Do I need to clarify?
No, I just,
I think I get it. Well, here, come on. Here's my view on it, and I think we are actually giving opportunities for businesses that with the non-conforming already. We're letting them, okay, you've been in business for however many years, or this particular property has, we're gonna allow you to have invisible spaces, basically, to keep it where you're at. And if you wanna upgrade, if somebody wants to buy it for another use, they gotta come up with more parking spaces. But I don't think that's overly restrictive. Again, we can't just say, carte blanche, do anything anywhere and not have reasonable control over how, what you can do on a certain size property. So I understand your concern. I mean, I think, you say you have, your office space and you'll be able to register that for however many non-conforming. What was that? 8, was it?
Probably 7. For a 2,000 square foot, theoretical, it'd be 7. Yeah.
7. So you get 7 non-conforming spaces. So you can do, there's probably a few things you can, other than office space, that could be done with only 7 spaces, alleged spaces. And if you need some more, I think we really do have to grit our teeth and do something more about shared parking possibilities. That would make it a little better, hopefully, for your concerns.
I also have the concern that with this parking and with these kinds of things, that we are actually controlling the businesses here. And we are forcing them into certain situations. We are not inviting, we are not being friendly to businesses. I think there's a balance there that we are not hitting.
I agree.
What would you like us to do to be more
I'm
friendly?
not saying, I don't believe also that you throw everything out the door, but I just believe that we can do better than this. We can do better. Whether we increase the footage for shared parking as initial starting period, where we're allowing people to have this. I think that that's fair. We can start with that. But as it sits, we have 66 feet for these people to acquire spaces. That's not giving them anything. You're not giving them anything. So if you say, well, this is what we're going to do initially, okay, this is what we're going to do initially, and we're looking at this as we move forward and do other things, which is my understanding. We're moving forward to look at other things. And we say that you have this amount of distance if you choose to gain access to other parking possibilities, if you want to change your business. I would be content, but with 66 feet, I am not content because you're strangling certain people. And I don't think that's right either. I think that we need to give some opportunity, and 66 feet does not do that. If we went with 1,500, 1,200, I would be happy.
Can I ask? I want to ask Mr. Igo's planning. He's been sitting in on their discussions. I don't want to put you on the spot, but my understanding that the reason this came to us before the distance and everything is you kind of needed to know this is what we were going to do before you guys decided on a distance. Or am I wrong there?
I think you're putting me on the spot. I don't remember.
Okay.
I gotta remember which came first, the chicken or the egg, which we got. But I know that we put a lot of thought into the distance there that came out. I don't recall that it was 66 feet. I thought it was more.
66 is what it currently is. That's the current, yes.
So we looked at larger distances. So I think we were amenable to some of that discussion.
I'll certainly go back and look and see what stalled that process. I don't remember, that was before I was the manager. It was back, I believe, almost a year or more that was last discussed. It was being discussed, I believe, before the meeting in April even occurred.
Yeah.
Yes, one more.
With some properties not being 66 feet wide on Main Street.
I think the 60s.
How does that fit into? I'd be more comfortable in something bigger than 66.
I think the 66 feet was probably just to essentially get across the road. Because when the ordinance was drafted, it was to go from the museum down here to allow them to share parking over at Bolzberg Steakhouse at the time. So it was to get them across the road. I don't think there was necessarily a lot of study done to see how widely this would be used.
Well, if you just project down that way and into West Main, a lot of those lots aren't 66 feet wide.
As far as I'm concerned, you know, this village is not the biggest area in the world. I wouldn't have a problem sharing parking throughout, because your customers are gonna dictate how close they wanna park. If we say, okay, you can share parking all over the township or all over the village, and somebody wants to come to have dinner at your restaurant, they're gonna say, well, I'm not parking all the way over there, I'll go somewhere else. So your customers are gonna dictate how far away you can share your parking. So
But you're not using those spots.
I'm just saying, that's what I would be, that's why I said I would be worried about, you know, sharing everywhere. I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Okay, well,
So I think we can have the conversation about distances a later time.
that's
And-
exactly what
and
I was saying.
I'm prepared at this moment to move that we, direct the staff to forward this proposed ordinance to the Center Region Planning Commission for review and advertise the amendment for potential adoption at a future meeting.
Is the 66 feet in here somewhere?
It's not, it's in the
Okay,
ordinance.
okay. That's what I was looking for, okay.
No, we can have that
So
conversation.
this is just to add to that.
Okay.
So,
We'll get there one
Yeah.
step at a time.
all right. So
Is that a
Bruce made the
motion,
motion,
That
yeah.
was a motion.
You need a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Dennis, second. More discussion that? Okay. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No, me,
And some of us could do with walking more than 66 feet.
maybe. If it had that in there, if it had the additional.
All right. Okay, next, home occupation regulations evaluation.
In the continuing effort to update Chapter 12 and to begin addressing another item on the Planning Commission's work plan, staff prepared a memo that addresses 12-2.4A11, home occupations. The home occupations section is another part of zoning first introduced in 1965 that saw its last significant amendment in 1978, 46 years ago. The memo was presented to the Planning Commission at their February meeting and is included with the agenda packet for your review. It's the pink memo in your packet. The home occupation regulations are codified as one of 30 accessory uses near the beginning of the zoning chapter. In short, when a resident expresses a desire to operate an accessory business from their dwelling and they contact staff to inquire about applicable regulations, we require that they send us a written description of the business they propose to operate, the location they intend to use, and a statement indicating that they have reviewed the regulations applicable to home occupations, that they intend to follow such. We have never required a zoning permit for home occupations, which is not unusual for some accessory uses, and we have rarely, if ever, received complaints about those individuals conducting home occupations. It's important to point out that a home occupation operating as an accessory business from one's home is not the same thing as working from home. If one is employed by an entity with a physical location somewhere else in the world and their business model is to have employees perform that work from their dwellings rather than from an office or other workspace, those employees are simply complying with their employer's business models. Any regulations Harris Township has or might enact will not affect those who work for someone else from their homes. After discussion of the memo, the Planning Commission agreed that a recommendation be forwarded to you to adopt the municipality's planning code language pertaining to regulations for no-impact home-based businesses as described in the memo. The Planning Commission further offered that they would wait to see if the Board of Supervisors preferred to also create a set of low-impact home business regulations to address those instances where minimal traffic and other impacts to neighborhoods could occur before discussing such an idea at length. If the board is satisfied that the MPC language for no-impact home-based businesses is an acceptable means of updating the existing home occupation regulations, then the draft of how that would fit into our ordinance can be provided at your April meeting. If the board would prefer to add a low-impact version of this accessory use, the item should be returned to the Planning Commission for further study and discussion. Staff's recommendation is this is a discussion item. If you desire to have a low-impact section in addition to the MPC version, the board should return the issue to the Planning Commission.
Frank?
I'll start. Oh, I would just, this history that you gave, that was very good. That explained the whole thing to me. And then when I got done with that and I read back here what you want to change it to on that yeah, we're just basically updating to what we're doing now versus what we did in 1950 and 1978. So I didn't see anything on there that would do that. And as far as the low impact, you said it yourself, we aren't getting any complaints from these. So until we see anybody come through that wants a little bit higher impact or go with that, I think we just stay with this one unless you guys think we should, put one in now. I mean, if we're not ever getting any complaints, and we have a lot of people who have businesses in their homes.
Oh, yeah.
So I think as long as we're not hearing anything, we just update the language and move on.
What is low impact?
Low impact would be those types of uses, I actually have everything printed off here. If you look at our regulations that were in the memo, there are things that can be done as home occupations that might be considered low or even more than low impact, and that would be someone that has a medical or dentistry office in their house, engineers, lawyers, accountants, real estate people, insurance people, barbers and beauticians, babysitting. Those are all situations where it's not no impact, because you're going to have customers coming to the business, sometimes infrequently, sometimes on a regular basis. In the case of babysitting at a home, if you can have up to 5 children in addition to your own children in the home, you could have 10 or more trips a day, depending on how many kids are there and it could be a situation where there are kids in the morning, there are kids that leave at noon, and then you could have 10, 20, 30 trips to those types of things. So those are types of home occupations that we currently allow that do have an impact on the neighborhoods. The no impact regulations in the MPC, I think they prohibit the use of outside employees. It says you can't really do anything that's going to impact the neighborhood as far as traffic and waste and things like that.
So what you're saying is what we have now is working.
Well, it's working as well as it can be expected. The MPC language was sort of mandated by the state in 2001 to be added to zoning ordinances. And we didn't find out about it until we started doing research on this issue last year. So I think we have to pretty much add the MPC wording as a no impact business so that that's in there. And if you want to have a low impact section also, you can do that. The other Central Region municipalities I researched, the Borough, Patton, College, and Ferguson all contain home occupation regulations. Only one of those, Ferguson, has a no impact language, and they also have 2 types of home occupations defined. Type 1 allows some customers. I don't think it is more definitive than that. Type 2, those are conducted from a farm structure, which isn't really what we're talking about here.
Farm structure.
Yeah. Ferguson has a lot of, farms, so they allow the equivalent, I guess, of a home occupation to occur from a barn or for some other farm structure.
You're talking a sale product,
Right.
perhaps.
Right. So it appears, from my review of the other Central Region municipalities, Ferguson Township's the only one that specifically has the wording that the MPC requires us to have.
No, I'm confused. Did you say the other ones have definitions for low impact or not?
No.
No, none of them do.
Ferguson's the only one that does that. Everybody else has home occupation regulations like we do. They differ from ours, but they have home occupations.
So the babysitting example, though, that's kind of a little troubling because, child care is such a big issue, and little neighbor babysitting things, I don't think should be regulated like that. If there's a regulation of, by the state of only up to 5 non-family kids being cared for before you have to get a licensed daycare, that seems like a reasonable threshold to have in the township. I don't believe your phone's ringing off the hook about people complaining about the babysitter next door. And so I want to make sure that is not prohibited. And
Yeah,
so-
I think that's your best argument for having a low-impact section of this ordinance also.
Can you limit the low impact and say, in low impact, we only have babysitters?
If you want to do that, yeah, and I would ask you not to try and figure this out tonight. If you think it's a good idea to have a low-impact section, send it back to the planning commission. If you have specific ideas to communicate to them, that's probably a good idea, but you can have the low impact say pretty much whatever you want.
I find some low impact troubling. The reason why is because, you know, the more traffic you bring into the neighborhood, there are many reasons why you can say makes our children less safe, whether it's cars driving in, whether it's people who we are not familiar with or do not know. You know, and so I have a problem with it having too much low impact. I agree with the babysitting issue, with that kind of thing, but I'm not so sure I agree with anything that's bringing random people outside of the neighborhood in.
Yeah, I think there are lots of examples out there statewide of low-impact type ordinances, and we can gather some of that information with the planning commission and talk about this for however long we have to talk about at planning commission level before it comes back to you.
So basically, what you're proposing is this no impact home, or this one here, the home occupancy. We're good with that, and we're going to move that in, or whatever we're going to do with that, and then send the low impact back to the planning commission.
Yeah,
Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, and it's up to you folks, if you want to just wait to adopt the no impact with the low impact as it's revised. There's
That
a,
makes more sense.
Do more.
oh, no, I wouldn't anticipate it would take that long. And Bob's here to witness me saying that, so.
I 6 of one, half a dozen.
Yeah, well, the thing is, every time we propose an ordinance, we have to advertise it, and that
Right.
costs money.
Yeah.
So it's not gonna be the end of the world if we have to wait, but again, you know, I can't think of other low-impact examples that I'd want to allow, like, no, I don't want a dentist's office in the neighbor's house.
What about somebody
You
getting
know.
income taxes out of their home and everybody coming to drop their taxes and pick them up?
It's the same thing as far
Yeah,
as I'm
same
concerned.
thing.
We have too many
I
people.
know, people,
Too many people.
Recall years ago when we had one person collecting taxes.
I'm talking about doing it personally.
Well, the number of people that visited that property to pay their taxes was pretty heavy.
Yeah, I mean, if you really wanted to do something like that, go meet them at the cafe, pick up the information and drive home. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, if that's the way we do it, you can still have it, but, you know, have it mailed, mail it to you, whatever you need to do. But,
you're not gonna be able to stop everything, because things are gonna slip through the cracks. There's always gonna be somebody that does something, they never, you know, as long as nobody complains, then nothing's gonna happen to what they're doing. But
There's also an entrepreneurial spirit out there that people are trying to make a buck.
Yep, and there's gonna be more of it
Yeah.
coming.
By consensus, can we just send this back to the planning commission? Without,
Yeah.
without kind of motion or?
yeah,
I think so. I think we're good.
but looking at low impact.
Good.
All right.
Get out of here before you go some more.
You wanna hang around for a couple more minutes?
Yeah, come on. Okay, all done with that one. Let's see. I'll turn the page here. Okay, simple one, request to use the Bollesburg Fire Police.
I move to approve the use of the Bollesburg Fire Police on July 14th from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. for the Arts Fest 5K and 10K races.
Second.
Okay. That's Frank, and Frank moved, Bruce seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All right, next is Memorial Day street closings.
Move to approve the street closings and temporary no parking zones as described, and request PennDOT to cover the no parking signs on Route 45 during the events of Memorial Day.
Second.
Okay, Bruce moved, Frank seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, I like these kind of.
We're officially-
Okay, and PSU plot pilot agreement consultant services.
So as discussed during the January 24th meeting, Center County representatives and municipal managers from several Center Region municipalities have been meeting over the past several months to discuss a settlement agreement that provides payments from Penn State University in lieu of taxes. The agreement is due to expire at the end of 2024, and the working group is gathering necessary data to inform our discussion with the university. The working group decided to seek the assistance of a consultant to help assess the impacts of the university on municipal costs, including establishing criteria and data collection. The group agreed to split the base cost of the consultant equally, with any party-specific request being the financial responsibility of that party. The consultant provided hourly rates for the assessment and told the county representatives that they did not anticipate this process exceeding $30,000 in costs. Since there are 5 parties in the settlement agreement, the cost of the township should be no higher than $6,000. Center County prepared a memorandum of understanding stating that the county will provide payment to the consultant for services rendered, and each party will reimburse the county for their portion of the consultant's fee. The MOU needs to be signed by the manager before the working group can move forward with utilizing the consultant. And I had sent you all an email informing you of this MOU and decided to put it on the agenda just based on individual comments that were provided back to me about it, just so there's an opportunity to discuss it. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Yes, sir.
I would make a counter offer. To me, it seems as though the fairest way to do that is to use a prorated percent. Say the university is giving $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Use the same percent model we did when we did the power purchase agreement, based upon how much electricity we're going to use. That seems more fair than saying flat 6,000 or under. I want to base it on something.
Well, and that's fine. I will say that this process, we're trying to move forward quickly, and everyone else has already signed the MOU, and it's sitting on my desk for signature. So if we need to go back and discuss this, it's going to certainly slow down us getting the consultant working and be able to get with Penn State to start talking about the agreement.
And we also don't know what that total in lieu fee from the university is, do we?
We won't know what the final is going to be, correct. Right now, we get $13,000 a year from Penn State, and this agreement has been in place for, I believe it's pretty close to 15 or 17 years. So, you know, we've been getting that fee. It's been increased annually, a certain amount. Every year it goes up a little bit. I don't know what it will be as the outcome of this. Certainly, I think as partners, we're all hoping that it will be increased to some degree. We don't know how much. That's part of this process. And I think overall everyone felt, because of the way it's currently distributed, a lot has changed since this was last done. So everyone, I think, was just entering into this as equal partners to see where we all kind of come out in terms of this solid number.
Also,
where it goes from here in terms of percentage breakdown, that's something the board would still have to approve. So this final agreement still would come down to the board.
That number never appeared on the revenue side of the audit. That's 13,000. I looked for it this afternoon. I could not find it.
In there, it might be under just a lump category of other revenues. I don't know. I could go through here and find it.
Well, they have
But-
the federal, the state,
I'm sure it's in there. We know we get it.
total revenues, executive manager, tax collection.
Okay, anybody else have any comments while Dennis is looking through that?
I'm not sure that I can imagine a way to prorate it. I mean, the impact of the university on municipalities is not necessarily proportional to population. It's also proportional to location, to arterial access, to, I mean, it's a complicated thing. And we're just getting into this, and that's what the consultant's going to help us figure out, is how it ought to be.
Right.
And I think to try to presume now how that'll turn out. I mean, if we knew that, we wouldn't have to hire the consultant.
That's the point. Well, the question I asked you the other day was the physical space, the physical lands that the university owns. It's a strange piece that borders Ferguson Township.
It's actually more than I thought it was too. I went back
Okay.
and redid the math, and I believe it's closer to around 35 or 40 acres. I
In
thought
the
it
same location?
yeah.
Okay.
So
Well,
that,
look at, for example, the traffic impacts from football and other events that come up from the south through Harris Township. I mean, that's not insignificant.
We're also talking about the other impacts of people buying second homes up here and not necessarily working in the area, not providing income in the area, which does, absolutely provide an issue. But I think, like, when we talked about the 6,000, like, didn't,
13,000.
the 6,000 we're paying, the consultant.
It would be less,
Yeah,
right.
but we also talked about that there's a good chance, like, if you, I'd like you to mention to them that, we like to look at this again at the end to see how everything's divvied up.
And it's something that, this data is gonna help us when we go to the negotiating, table with Penn State to talk about what we feel is fair. And as far as how it gets split around, I believe the last time this all happened back in the 90s when it first started, that split was decided by the municipalities. It wasn't decided by Penn State. So it's going to be all the partners are going to have to come to agreement on this. All of the chairs of the governing bodies at that time had to sign that agreement with Penn State when it was renewed. So it's going to be something that you'll get back before it's all said and done to
You
determine
said
how.
they talked to Tom Kirsch about this, because he's sort of the historian of,
Yeah,
municipal
Amy had a
government.
discussion with him. She reached out to him a little bit about it, and he provided a little background. But it's been so many years since this was first initially done that we felt it was best to just have a clean slate to start, because a lot has changed in the last, 30 plus years. And I think, Denny, that is on. I think I found it here, although I don't see these pages are numbered.
they are.
It might be. I think it's under contributions and donations from private sectors. To be honest with you, that looks like the right amount.
Contributions from private sector.
I think
We don't know.
Well, my take on the
11,973, which
my,
was
my take on the
a little less last
6,000
year.
is it's 6,000, it's not 60,000. It's not a lot of money, and we're definitely gonna, can't imagine we won't recoup, a lot more than what we're putting into it.
Well, what do
for
we
a
normally
consultant.
get? What do we get 13,000 annually? That is a lot of money. 6,000 from 13, that's a huge proportion,
Yeah, but-
considering that other municipalities are getting an enormous amount of money compared to us. And so for us to pay equal amount for a consultant, I agree, let's get this moving. I agree that the discussion time comes later.
If we can't negotiate to recoup that 6,000 in this agreement, we're bad negotiators. That's number one. Number two, the one thing that does need to be looked into this, and this is coming from Frank sitting on the MPO and seeing the numbers. Those of you who may not know, Penn State is not a member of CATA. We are a member, and we pay that extra amount as being a member to come up with the local match. Penn State, I don't know if nobody asked them or they don't. Well, make sure we put in there that part of that impact is a real good portion of that $775,000 we've got to come up with in the center region to do the local match. They ought to be pumping out at least half of that local match, because really about 90%, because 90% of the kids ride those buses. So they're impacting us big time at CATA, and so when they have that negotiation, I'd like to see that put in.
There's no impact of CATA buses running through campus?
No, no. What I'm talking about, Denny, is we have to provide. I think it's 7% is what the CATA. I'm pretty sure that's what it is
About 7.
for local match. That's about $775,000 that the municipalities have to do. It's part of our annual what we put in. Penn State is just like Bellefonte and these other apartment buildings. They contract.
Okay.
And now they pay about $2.5 million a year to CATA, but my point is it's putting more impact on us because we have to come up with that money to be a member to meet that local match. And if we don't do the local match, then they get less money, and every year they want more money, so the local match goes up. I just think that Penn State should be starting to give us a little bit of that money.
Well, I brought my alternative up just for discussion, so I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm
I'm
fine
fine
going
with it.
there.
I already sent him the same thing you just said.
Sign the MOU.
Sign it. Sign it.
Sign it. Good. That's consensus. Okay. Manager's report. Anything you'd like to highlight, Mark?
I do, and I actually have a couple things I'm going to add to it. First is the Cato Spring Convention. If any of you are interested in attending, March 27th at 5 for your meet and greet and light meal, and then 6 o'clock for business. It's meeting. It's up at CPI. Let me know or Deb know. We'll get you signed up. We need to know by the 22nd.
Yeah, what about?
Okay, Nigel and Denny are yes. Okay.
Frank's definitely yes.
I'm a no.
Okay.
I'm having surgery,
Oh, okay.
okay?
We'll let you
I'm a
out.
no.
I have fires.
Wednesday, the 27th.
Okay, I'm not sure about,
All right.
okay.
A few other things I'll mention. I forgot to mention in here. You're in, Bruce? Okay. We did get a new township vehicle. If you notice, we no longer have the 2005 Ford Explorer or any of the rust that was laying underneath it sitting behind the township building anymore. We were able to get a 2024 Ford Maverick. It was delivered a little early.
I thought they quit making them years ago.
No, it's a Maverick hybrid. And it's parked out there in the garage. I'll pull it out one of these days if you want to take a look at it. It's definitely a nice vehicle, but we were able to get it through CoStars for just slightly over half of what we budgeted. And it's been budgeted for several years, so it's a good time for us to get it.
We don't want to see it. We're going to want to take it on a test.
Okay. Well, it doesn't have any Harris Township, on the side yet, so really you're incognito.
That's what we would want to
That's
take.
what you want.
It became licensed though, that was nice.
It did,
Yeah.
yes. I also wanted to mention for the property sale, I mentioned last month having that for August 5th for bid openings. I'm going to move that back a week, so to, I guess, it'll be the August the 9th, I believe. It'll be the end of that week. The 5th is a Monday. I'm going to move it to the end of that week, just making it easier for staff schedule. It would still be where you would be awarding that, if anybody is a successful bidder, at your August meeting. I just want to make you aware
Why
of that.
did today's July rather than June, July, or?
Primarily just to give opportunities for people to bid on it and for us to advertise it. We really can't use a realtor to advertise, so we're going to try to do everything we can to get word out. And we actually had a lot of folks contacting us interested in getting the bid package. I've been working on that with the solicitor to make sure we have all of our terms and conditions
I've
correctly.
had
in
several people ask me about it.
Yeah, there's been a lot of interest in it so far. Under number 1, I wanted to bring up the idea of us using positive pay here in the township. It's a very inexpensive fraud protection type of tool that we can use. It's for $10 a month. I'll need to put it on next month's agenda for you to actually act on it, but it's something all the municipalities pretty much use, and it's with increases in fraud, it just seems like a good expense to avoid potential check fraud. I did, under number 4, wanted to mention that we did have someone meet with us about potential development of the property that's just to the east of Fairfield and Harris Acres. It's a 17-acre parcel, just kind of right behind where the lawnmower repair shop is at, or the dealership. So they don't own it. They said they're just looking at it. But I want to make you aware of it in case anybody were to approach you about that, wondering if you had any knowledge of it. On the backside, under number 8, I wanted to point out Mary Elizabeth Street. I did get an update since I put out this manager's report. We should have the money back by the end of the month. It was cleared here on the 8th, and they said for a 14-day pay. So it should be here hopefully in the next 2 weeks, which will be it'll be $398,000 back into our account, which will be
That makes that negative thing go away, half of it.
It makes most of that, yes. Okay. It'll be very, very helpful for us to take care of a few things. I also wanted to note under number 9, we did have a recent meeting, or I had a recent meeting with a representative of the cemetery that cited some concerns about the amount of parking on Old Bullsburg Road. And I don't know if any of you have been by to see where near the cemetery there has been a lot of ruts from people parking. So we are going to be widening that road by a little bit. We're doing micro-surfacing on it this year, so we're going to have an extra 2 feet paved on that side just to make it a consistent cartway width the whole way down along that corridor. Hopefully that'll ease some of that rutting that's taking place.
Is that brewery parking?
Yeah, I believe it's mostly people for the brewery that are going there. Yes. So it's something that this individual cited as a long-term concern for them. Hopefully this will alleviate some of those concerns if we're able to give people a solid surface to park on. But I don't know what other options there would be, really, aside from trying to widen the road further, which I don't know that we'd have the right of way to do that.
Is there a lot filling up, or is it too wet to park, or what?
It's definitely, I think, too wet down there right now for them to do much.
Yeah, the paved lot's almost always
Right.
filled up, and they can only use that grass lot. when
They have
it's
approached
dry
us about putting a formal parking lot on that side of the property, but that's going to be several months out before they could do that.
In
So,
the grass
in,
area?
in that grass area, yes, they've talked about putting some more formal parking over there. in the
People are
next few
parking up
months.
behind the barn, some people park right across the street at the military museum. They can just wait till the weather gets warm. Oh,
And we got the money for the crossing too, didn't we?
We did,
right.
yes.
398?
Yeah, we were able to get that accepted. Now I'm just waiting to hear from PennDOT on what the next steps are on that. So, and then the last thing I want to mention here under number 10, just that our crew, I want to give them some recognition. Our maintenance crew took and have worked on the planters, the pot and the fountain from down there at the Diamond. I saw them out in the facility today. They look really great. They're going to be putting those back in place here probably this week. They also took and refinished some of the benches that were over by the old pump. They also took the old pump down, and they're working on trying to fix that up as well. So hopefully by the time Memorial Day rolls around, we'll have a bunch of nicely painted pots and planters and furniture and other things down in the Diamond, just for the day in town. So if anybody has any questions about any of the other items, I'd be happy to
I have a question.
answer. Yeah.
Number 11,
Yes.
the maintenance superintendent, March 5th to discuss several plan projects in Township Country Place Park. That's the one over by you, correct? Yes. What are we doing with Country Place Park? Because we have some issues over there, do we not?
We do. Right now, what we were looking at was, first off, putting in some type of a connection from Discovery Drive over to Country Place Park proper, so people can walk from, like the gates, for example, down to go use the playground or things like that. So we were out there primarily to meet with the engineer to determine slopes, if there was going to be any concerns, and try to identify a possible path location. More long-term discussion of what we're doing in that park, we're going to be meeting with the Parks Committee next week to talk about what they want to do on that master plan. There was $25,000 allocated this year for projects in that park. Certainly that pathway isn't going to cost that much, so there's leftover funds to do other things with, but we want to talk with them to get a priority of what they want to do.
Well, I guess I'm concerned more about the maintenance of that park. When someone says that
Sure.
there's, poison ivy growing on the, where children are playing, that,
There's a lot of invasive species there.
Yeah, the maintenance is going to be a separate issue. This was primarily to talk about physical improvements,
Okay.
but maintenance definitely, if I need to speak with Center Region Parks about things, or if we need our guys to go in there and clear some more invasives and then have them keep up with it, that's obviously the key is
Well,
them keeping
our
up
guys,
with it.
not last summer before last, or last year this time, the guys went in and they took all those invasive species out. Looked really good. The park was about this wide. Once they got the invasive species out, it's about this wide. And all summer, I told Jim Carpenter several times, they would just come down and mow and they wouldn't weed eat that, and that species just kept coming right, and it's back out again. So, what he's talking about is we have to have some kind of memorabilia, or you know what I mean.
Memorandum.
Yeah, that one. But what they're going to do every time they come in there and cut the grass or whatever, what we want done to those parks to maintain them, and not just that one, all our parks.
maybe if you could tell them not to run over the benches and.
No, you mean hit them with the lawnmowers
Yeah,
and break
stop
them?
hitting them with the lawnmowers, get off of it and move them nicely and behave yourselves,
Sure.
That'd be really nice, to have a little respect. And I guess I thought there was one more.
You're good.
Nope, I think that was it. Yep, that was it.
Anybody else?
We still are waiting for no parking signs in Brush Valley Road. It's been a year.
I know. I'll check with Donnie again to see where he's at. I'm trying to get a hold of the sign person.
Now we're into the lawn mowing season and we're gonna get another delay.
Okay. We'll get him out there, Denny. We also need
Well,
to get some no
they-
parking signs for the parks
It
as
was,
well.
it was the question of spacing
Sure.
of the signs.
Yeah.
That's easily resolved.
Well, we need to get, whoever he was trying to get a hold of, I think it was Brad Coe, he was having a hard time getting them to call him back on the signs. I'll check with him again on it.
Okay.
Brad Coe, he's that Bender here.
Maybe they'll give you a free sample sign.
Yeah.
There you
Take a bunch of them.
go. There you go.
Okay, we good? Move on to approval of vouchers.
I move to approve vouchers number 2024-02 in the amount of $174,060.01.
Second.
Question. I saw, we had the postponing that one payment.
Yes.
Is that something we're gonna do here soon, or?
Well, that we were waiting on the Mary Elizabeth money and
Okay. Gotcha.
now that's gonna be coming in. Once that's here, we'll be taking care of
Okay,
that.
gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
It'd be a nice refund from the police for 23,
We did, yes.
29,000.
That's, I think primarily due to the fact they don't have enough officers, so with a smaller staff, they don't have enough people to send out here, so.
So
that's my-
why are they doing parking tickets?
We'll take it in cash.
Not my fault, not my fault.
Nothing, no
Okay.
problem, never mind.
Any questions on the vouchers? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, COG committee reports, executive committee basically set the agenda for the general forum. Human Resources Committee did not meet. Climate Action and Sustainability Committee met today. Very long discussion about awarding a contract for the refuse and recycling, and it will be presented at the general forum. And so that's it. Facilities and whatever else you want to do.
Me.
Dennis?
Yeah, we met, the 5th, and had a presentation by the finance people. Looked at a lot of the things that came from the finance and exec with respect to guidelines for principles of putting together the CPI. So we have a list of about 9 items that we're going to be presenting to your committee, Frank. And then we also looked at a table that they put together with respect to capital improvement requests coming up about 3 to 4 years down the road. So, getting ready for budget time again.
Yeah, we sent some stuff your way too.
Pardon?
Last month, we sent some stuff your way
Yeah,
too.
that's what we talked about.
Yeah.
Okay, so sustainability, we met February 28th. Nothing major. Ended up talking about the Green Sky ongoing service, which is going to cost us about $110 a year for the duration of the contracts, and then spent the rest of the time talking about the next steps and signing the contracts in April. April board meeting, council approved PPA contracts. It takes us to about the end of the 5th year.
So I should plan to have that on the agenda for April is what you're,
Yeah.
okay.
Pam will send us something to
All
do that, so, okay. Thank you.
All right. That's all you have?
Yeah.
Okay, next, Bruce with Parks Capital, et
Okay,
cetera.
Parks Capital did not meet. So the governance committee did meet. I didn't make the meeting. I was out of town. My understanding is they're going to work on, so just in general, let me recap for governance. Sort of a three-pronged thing. One is realigning the memorandum of understanding, letting Parks Capital sunset, and reassigning the responsibilities to other committees. And I think that's a fairly straightforward process. This second part of it is going to be the authority rewriting their bylaws, and that's the responsibility of the authority, and they will be tackling that later in the year. And the third one, and this touches upon what Frank was saying, is having the park agency adopt a memorandum of understanding with each of the municipalities, standard boilerplate memorandum, and then separate addendums in the end, particular to our parks and specific things we want to do. This is, it's kind of, the whole park system has grown over the years, and it hasn't been clearly defined. Things like maintenance, okay? If something needs a new bolt put in a swing set, the park agency is going to stick that bolt in there. If something needs to be replaced, does it come back on the municipality? So those things just need to be defined and better defined. Interestingly, one of the things that came up in that discussion was standardizing purchases, because if we all purchase the same swing set facility, then the park maintenance people will have the appropriate pieces to fix small problems. So that's kind of where that's going to go. So that's a quick overview of that. I'll say Whitehall Road should open up this spring, be a grand opening. The fields will probably not be ready to use until fall. And Millbrook Marsh is well on its way to getting the current projects completed. The bugaboo is going to be the boardwalk, and I think there's a growing recognition that that's going to have to be a phased project. We can't just bite off the whole thing at once. Let's take care of what we have, then look at potential expansions or some ADA issues and things like that that are going to come into play. But they're looking at getting a capital campaign type thing going and getting people on board for it and getting some outside money. That's it.
Okay, thank you. So Frank, finance and,
Finance, we meet this Thursday. Nothing, we haven't met since the last time we met, so we meet Thursday. Connector, you'll be looking for a public hearing coming up here in the next month or so to present the next phase to the public, and we'll probably have another get-together on that. MPO. Okay, we had, basically, this was our first meeting of the year, so we did a lot of organizational stuff. Interesting, State College, when they look at this last section of Atherton Street, the part 4 of that project, from Allen Street down to University Drive, they want a road diet there to make it smaller. Now, by golly, if that gets a road diet, we can't get one out here, I'm gonna be a little upset.
How would they want a road diet?
I'm
Crazy.
I'm just telling you, they're looking at one.
That's crazy.
And,
that section, oh my goodness.
so anyway, that's something, and then we went through some of the upcoming, what bridges are being worked on this year, so like I said, a lot of the stuff like that. The one thing that I did, oh, by the way, I'm now in the safety committee, which is one of our subcommittees, so it gives me a couple more meetings a year, just what I wanted. There was one thing that went on there that I will probably never get elected in the center region again for my comments. They talked about electrical vehicle charging and infrastructure and coming up with some monies to put towards that. And I voiced my opinion that we should leave it for the private sector right now. Because if you look at electric cars, Hertz just sold 20,000 of them off. Ford quit shipping them again the other day. They aren't selling the way they are. And I said, why not we take that money instead of putting it in that infrastructure and let the private sector do the infrastructure? Because we have a lot of outlying areas that you get out of the center region, that there's bridges and roads out there. They must provide a match. So they can literally do about $100,000 worth of road repair a year. So take that and give it to the outlying areas. So that's kind of what I said. I wasn't against electric cars. I wasn't against, but I think that publicly we shouldn't be putting that money to it. Let the private sector do it till we see how much we're going to need. If we put all this money out and nobody buys an electric car. The other thing I brought up was if everybody gets an electric car and they go home at night and plug it in, it's going to increase our electrical demands by a lot. And now we're going to have to go out and put more coal, oil, gas plants in, and everything we made up from electric cars, we're going to spew back into the atmosphere, making power. So I made that comment, and then when the vote came up, I was the only one that voted against it. Everybody else voted for it, including the outlying areas, which that kind of depressed me a little bit because I felt the money would be better spent locally to those roads. But again, just so you know, in case somebody asks you about the goofy guy and your guy, that would be me. The other one is public safety, which I attended for Tracy. I can make you do it, but I won't. The only thing, there's one thing that was on there. Well, two things. They're going to have, I think it's the 30th of May. They will have the big exercise out at the airport. I heard them the other day asking for actors to go out there where they have the major casualty, and they actually have people go out and they put like ketchup on them and stuff. But they're going to have that big accident out there for the emergency management. So that's sometime in May. The other thing, they're in May or June, and I guess we'll all get invited to this. It's a COG, they're going to have it at a COG meeting, is active shooter training. So they're going to do it so if somebody ever runs in the COG building at a general forum meeting, we're all going to know what to do besides hit the floor and duck. But they're going to have active shooter training sometime in May or June. time frame. So that's pretty much all that was there. Most of it, like I said, was pretty much, they did a lot with the firefighting equipment and stuff, which since we don't do anything with that, I don't usually pay attention to that.
Email address,
Which email?
the one from Tammy about the car purchase.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
I got an email from Tammy Strauss that I have from Tammy Strauss,
Oh, okay.
that I have to actually respond to, tonight or tomorrow. I have until 5 o'clock tomorrow, I believe, to respond to this. They are looking to purchase 7 automobiles and 1 F-150 truck for the grand total of $71,000 more than they had budgeted. So it was kind of willy-nilly because what they said was these cars were at the end of their useful lives. I called Tammy and asked her what exactly was the end of useful life. Because, I mean, we seem to have varying thoughts of what the end of useful life is. And to me, you know, they have no description to me. They don't tell me, and even with like the truck, now they're putting off, the truck is $63,000. I'm like, are you kidding me? And so I'm thinking, where is the end of the useful life of the truck that's there? So I guess I wanted much more information than they're willing to provide me. I wanted to know that this car has 200,000 miles on it and it's falling apart or whatever, and I don't even know if you need to go that far. But just telling me that a car is 9 or 10, when they said to me that these cars, they've been wanting to replace these cars for several years. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. So what is the end of a useful life? And I just don't have those answers, and therefore I cannot say yes, because I don't have these answers and they can't provide them to me.
The same question came up in finance with respect to useful life. The same item came up with respect to the 4 to 5 year down the road CPI, and vehicles were included in that. And we raised the same question. We want more specific information with defining that useful life issue.
There are other
It's
issues.
an arbitrary kind of.
But there are other issues associated with the whole thing, because they want to buy hybrid, vehicles. Now, on one hand, you know, I can sit there and say, we're talking about this, hybrids are good or whatever, but the Ford hybrids in particular, I think they're about 6,000 more than the non-hybrids. And apparently, from what I read, now I did not see a warranty on their battery. Toyota has a wonderful warranty on the battery. I did not see Ford's warranty, and I'm not sure what it is, but I do know that the batteries have been lasting 6 to 8 years. And if you have to spend $46,000 on a battery, I'm not so sure that that's worth where we want to put our money. I'm not sure. So I did think a lot about that. And then they said that they're putting off, in order to make up for that $71,000, they're putting off the purchase of an F-250 truck and a trailer of some sort, the fire trailer. But they didn't say how long they're putting it off. So I just don't have enough information to say yes to that at all.
That's one of the things that staff does. They have to evaluate when it becomes not cost effective to keep a vehicle on the road. And so that is one thing. I understand that. Your hybrid question, it's like, we have a 2007 Prius.
It's a
Same
Toyota.
original battery.
Yeah.
No, they last. And especially when they're used regularly like they are.
And you're talking about what
You're talking about Toyota.
Toyota
I
has
know,
a 10-year
but
warranty on theirs.
they have a warranty, but I'm not saying, I can't imagine you're gonna go through the battery pack in 4 to 6 years if it's used regularly.
A lot of those cars are not, they're not holding on as well as these.
We'll see, but, I mean, I think it's also a statement that, you know, what we're doing towards, you know, like climate goals.
Well, this,
Use the hybrids, you know.
This is one of the things I'm pushing in finance. Just because staff says we need it, you know, we can't keep every year just giving them everything they want. Sooner or later, we've got to say no. You know, we've got to, and somebody said about Walton, you know, because that's where the cars are coming from, that they're an enterprise, so they make their own money. Well, somebody said, well, how can we got to borrow? No, we don't have to borrow it. Last time I looked, we owned the building. We could increase the rent. You know, when was the last time you heard somebody that rented a building for, 15, 20 years with never having a rent increase? You know, so I think that we need to take a good hard look at the finances of COG and how it's running, and I'm gonna be probably putting a lot of waves up in finances here. And just on that kind of thing. For example, I've been looking at the budget, trust me, I've been in it for the last month and a half. you guys, I don't think any of us, I know I didn't realize it was that much. In the budget year of 2022, personnel, employment went up 24.5% that 1 year. Last year it went up 8.5%. They already projected 6% this year. So we either got to say, wait a minute, why aren't we getting more performance if we're getting that much more in employment? So I think what Tracy's saying here, I have no problem supporting her saying no to this. I would have no problem with that.
I think also, you know, coming from a financial background and everything, there are proportions, okay? If the township is growing by this much, then COG maybe should be growing as well. But if the township is growing if the COG is growing faster than the township, you know, either financially, personnel, I have a problem with it. I just think that there's things that are going on that maybe shouldn't be, that we need to consider what we're doing. And unless I have my eyes on that car and have a list of the cars and have a general understanding, there's no reason why I couldn't have a list of 7 cars that they were getting rid of and why they were getting rid of it. I'm sorry, I just don't, my useful life is not what somebody else's is. I have a 2013 Honda Crosstour. I do my first major repair right now, and that was $700, and I see no reason in the future, and I guarantee you I drive that car a heck of a lot more than they drive these Ford Escapes. So,
We got a good deal on the Maverick I've read.
Maverick.
It took a while looking for it, but we found it.
Yeah, it was definitely a good,
Came from a dealer in this town.
Okay.
Move we adjourn.
We're all done? Second. Number 9, okay.
We're adjourned.
Adjourned.